second day of dealing with angle and sides with our trig. First section says find the measure of each side indicated, round to the nearest tenth. So just a reminder here again, I'm just going to jot this up at the top of my page so I've got a reference with my sine, cosine, and tangent. So I guess 1's as good a place to start as any here. So I see the angle that they give me. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to mark that to remind myself of where my reference point's going to be. Next, I'm going to label my sides. So I always know if I start with my writing utensil and just follow along, I will find the opposite side. If I start at the right angle and follow my way along, I will find the hypotenuse, which will leave me the adjacent side. So to figure out which trig function I'm going to be using to get my answer, I need to see which two sides have either a variable or a number with them. So, looks like I've got opposite and hypotenuse, and opposite and hypotenuse go with sine. So I'm going to use the sine of 33 is opposite over hypotenuse. And we talked yesterday about how I could work this out algebraically. It would take me a couple of steps, but there was a little pattern that we talked about. We said if x was on top of the fraction, we would multiply the number in the trig function. But if x was on the bottom, like it is here, we would divide by the trig function. So we're going to go ahead. That's 6 divided by sine of 33. Now, some of you may be getting a different answer than this. So one of the things we talked about yesterday was the need to make sure that your calculator was in degree mode. Did I do that this time? No. Did it bite me in the butt? Yep. Because check me out. My calculator's in radian mode right now. Degree mode is necessary. So, once I'm sure I'm in degree mode, let's try this again. Okay, that'll help me out more. And you're like, now, how would I have known? Round into the nearest tenth. Okay, that's still 11. So how would I know at this point, that 6 was a bad answer? Well, here's my way of best telling you. We know the hypotenuse is the longest side. Okay, we can see that. We know that anyway. If I already know this side is 6, and now my hypotenuse is also basically 6, that's kind of a caution, kind of a red flag for me. So it's one of the things I'd want to watch out for when I'm doing these. So let's see here. Let's go down to 3. We'll do a couple in each section here. So I'll mark my angle. There's my opposite. There's my hypotenuse. That leaves me adjacent. Even if you just put A, H, and O real quick, just to kind of get you thinking. So then again, I'm going to look for the two sides that have either a number or a variable. In this case, that's my adjacent and my opposite. So I look for where I've got O and A. Okay, that's with T for tangent. So the tangent of 57 degrees is, and again, you've got to go in the order that they are here. So opposite over adjacent. And I notice this time the x is on top, which means I'm going to multiply the value in my trig function. So I'll pull out my calculator. 3 times the tangent of 57. And I get my side. So nothing too bad as far as that goes. Okay, so we're looking for sides. That's basically all I've got to do. Use the given two sides and my angle to make my quick ratio. Now, one slight thing will change in the next section. When we get to the next section, it says, find the measure of the angle indicated. Round to the nearest 10. Remember, when I'm looking for an angle, I have to hit second first. Or for some of you, I found out with some of the regular scientific calculators, it might be a shift button that you're having to hit on that. So, let's see here. Oh, let's just try 7 out since we're here. Okay, again, this little circle with a line in it, it's called theta. It's just a Greek letter. It's just like having X or something else there. But for angles, we usually use those instead. So when I get that situated, I go, okay, you know what I got to do next? I got to figure out my sides here. And get those labeled. Because similarly to what I did on the sides, I'm going to do the same thing with my angle. So I've got opposite and adjacent. And I look up at the top and I see opposite and adjacent. It's going to go with tangent. But when I do it with an angle, to remind myself, I use that little -1 to say, oh yeah, I got to do the inverse here. Opposite over adjacent. So button presses this time are going to be a little bit different. So when I do this one, I'm going to do second tangent. There's my little -1. Let me know I'm doing an angle. And then just type in my fraction. And we're going to the nearest tenth still. Okay. So theta is 35.8 degrees. So we'll do one more angle, and then we're going to do a solve the triangle, which we didn't seem to mention yesterday. So if we do 8, let me move this up a little bit here. All right, let's do my sides. There's an opposite. There's a hypotenuse and an adjacent. I see opposite and hypotenuse are the sides that I have this time, which is sine. So, see if I can avoid the glare a little bit, maybe. Second sine, to get my little -1. And it looks like theta is going to be 61 degrees. So issues at all with our sides or angles, because that's the same thing we're going to be doing on solve the triangle. It's just going to be, we get to do it a few times instead of just once. Nope, still not too bad. All right, to the back. We are going to solve a triangle. We will be solving 13. Here's what I typically will do on these. So I need to find 3 things. I got 2 sides, which I'm going to label X and Y so I can tell them apart from each other. And then I'm going to be looking for angle B, because that's the only angle I don't have. The angle will always be the easiest part of this, because I know there's 180 degrees in a triangle, and I know what the measures of 2 of the 3 angles are, 90 and 60. So once I get that set, 180 minus 150, it's going to be 30. So that would be angle B. I got that one. But then to find my other values, my X and my Y, I go back and I go, okay, they already gave me this 60, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. Whatever angle was there to start with, that's kind of going to be my reference that I use. So I look at that and I go, okay, so this would be opposite. This would be hypotenuse. And this is going to be adjacent. Could I have used the 30 with my b? Sure, but my sides would have been labeled differently. So I look at this and I go, okay, for x, I got opposite and I got adjacent. Because I got the x and I got the 6. Opposite and adjacent is tangent. So the tangent of 60 equals opposite over adjacent. And like we saw when we did a side on the front, when x is on top, we multiply the value and the trig function. So I do my 6 times the tangent of 60. So x would be 10.4. And then I got one job left. Got to find y, because that's the other side that I'm missing. So I look to see what I got this time. Y is my hypotenuse, and I still have the adjacent. So let's see. Adjacent and hypotenuse is going to be cosine. So the cosine of 60 is adjacent over hypotenuse. And I notice this time the variable's in the denominator. It's on the bottom. So when that happens, we take our value and we divide by the trig function. And get my value. And I'm done. Okay. So you've got a few of each of those left on here. Shouldn't be too bad to be able to check. Keys up front as always.